Scotland, as ever, has been very much in the eye of the storm this week. Let's talk right now to Neil Oliver, TV presenter, archaeologist, of course, and a good friend of the show. Neil, a very good morning to you.
Hi, Mike. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. How are you figuring out your Christmas bubble scenario? Because they've sort of managed to, by hook or by crook, make Christmas sound like a visit to the dentist.
Yes, as has been the case now for weeks, I am just bumbling through it. I'm sure, like millions of people, I'm probably breaking the law every day,
Right.
one way or another.
Whatever it happens to be this week, you know.
I suppose my reaction is I think there was an inevitability. I'm sure the governments have gone in for a kind of collective responsibility thing with this one, where they must surely have felt that the weight of public opinion, the length and breadth of the country, was going to be against them if there had been an attempt to, keep families and whatever apart at Christmas, and that they've gone all in with this attempt to pay lip service to letting people be together as though we're getting out on parole for 5 days.
Right.
I think there was probably an inevitability about that. And I'll be seeing family over Christmas without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
What upsets me though really is just the way. I mean, if you take COVID out of the equation, it's just the way in which so many millions of people have just internalized so quickly this idea that you have to be told what you can do and what you cannot do. There's a fundamental principle at stake about liberty and freedom. In this instance, we've surrendered, or millions of people have surrendered liberty in the name of this virus. But having done it once, it becomes that bit more likely and that bit easier that the same people would do the same again for other reasons.
Yes.
And just this idea that's out there now that we are not free people, that we don't make our own decisions, and we have to wait almost every day to be told what we can and cannot do and who with and for how long, is for me a profoundly worrying situation that I think will have consequences forever after.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I cringe when I hear people on radio stations and on television talking about it and then kind of parrot fashion saying, well, I don't know if we'll be allowed to do that. Because it is, as you say, profoundly disturbing. And we've been speaking to a lot of small business owners this week and last week who have been put under pressure from various local police constabularies to shut down. There's a woman somewhere in the north of England, I think, who's been fined £37,000 because she refuses to close her hairdressing salon. We've got our friend in Droitwich who's got a card shop, a stationer's shop, who have been served with notice from the police. And you just think to yourself, if this goes on now, it will go on forever. It will go on into the new year. It will go on whenever the government decides to somehow hand out yet another piece of advice or guidance or law. And they really seem to be enjoying it rather too much.
There's no end in sight. I mean, there's the vaccines are now available or just about to be available. But it doesn't seem that having been vaccinated will mean anything. Really,
no.
All the suggestions are that you could still be infected again, and that it wouldn't. It's not as though if we could somehow magically vaccinate 7 billion people in the same moment tomorrow, that it would all be over. It's been, in many ways, the vaccination just sounds like another complication that's to be interpreted one way today and another way tomorrow, and that its supposed efficacy is neither here nor there. It's just going to be another exercise in something that you have been seen to do, another box that you've ticked, another way in which you've been seen to have behaved.
Yes.
But it's not going to bring. None of it is going to bring. None of those moves are going to bring the pandemic to an end. That will have to be a decision made by people, the people.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be let out of it because it's apparent that governments are getting too much out of this. They've seen the potential of being, rather than people being free, and that you're free to do whatever you want unless there's a specific law prohibiting it, which was always the case in the past. The thing has been flipped through 180 degrees, where you're not allowed to do anything unless the government gives you permission.
Yes.
And that's a fundamental change.
Well, it really is, and it's been astonishing, and I think you and I would agree on this, how that has come about. I mean, which culminates in, and I know that you probably not rather I mentioned Ian Blackford's name, but it culminates in people like Ian Blackford more or less putting out a tweet in which he goads somebody for travelling to Scotland from England, even when the person involved had not actually travelled specifically from England to Scotland at all, and he's had to now withdraw it. But I mean, it leads to that kind of nastiness, doesn't it?
Well, that was a deplorable action. If someone in Ian Blackford's position, a senior politician, had genuine concerns about the safety of his constituents, then it would have been easy enough for him to have inquiries made about who the person was, where they had come from, where they lived, which would have quickly established that the person that he had targeted was living in Caithness and had every right to be out taking photographs. But instead, by going to social media to send out that tweet, that was just setting the dogs on someone.
Yeah,
that was purely to send those who would attack that person. It was just to get them moving, And here was an English person to be attacked, and Ian Blackford has previous on this. He famously retweeted that photograph of a road sign on the Scottish-English border that had been modified so that it had, F off or closed.
Right.
And only it wasn't F off; it was the whole word was spelt out.
Right.
And that Nicola Sturgeon then rises to his defence and says that once again he's behaved with nothing but grace and dignity. Grace and dignity are not words that I would use to describe setting the dogs on someone and retweeting an image that was purely designed to cause trouble and ill feeling.
Yes.
And it's not even the instant allegation that was made was that it was anti-English, and there is within the nationalist movement an anti-Englishness that's just undeniable.
Yeah.
There's talk all the time about how it's civic nationalism in Scotland, as though the use of civic is to give it a progressive and tolerant air.
Right.
But the anti-Englishness, now it's been, they don't use that word anymore. So they talk about Tories and Westminster and the London parties, and all of those are code for England and England. But it's not about that. It's about being the right sort of person, a good person. I mean, I'm born and bred here, but as far as the SNP and their supporters are concerned, I'm the wrong sort of Scottish born and bred person, because I don't support their agenda. And they'd be perfectly supportive of English people who and they are supportive of English people who say that they're in favour of Scottish independence.
Yeah.
But if you're an English person who says that you don't agree with independence, then you're a bad...
Yeah. But it's worse than that, Neil, because it's almost not about independence. It's about, and I saw some of this and I knew it would come yesterday because we put Ian Blackford in Plank of the Week and we put out a tweet of me impersonating him. And of course, the usual flurry of abuse came my way. When I pointed out that all of my family are from Scotland, that 2 of my children were born in Scotland, that I've lived in many parts of Scotland over various times of the year, that I've travelled more or less every year in my life to Scotland for one reason or another, I was accused of being a xenophobe against Scottish people. And I'm like, well, how can you be xenophobic against your own people? I don't think it's even the right word.
It's just, I find it almost inexpressibly depressing. And it's not just to do with nationalism and the calls for an independence referendum in Scotland and all the rest of it are just an example of a much wider depressing picture, which is about hatred. Never in my life have I lived through a time, nor did I expect to live through a time where there was just so much application of hatred all the time. Now we've got to the point where in Scotland there's a hate crime bill that's just freely talked about, when it comes to it was there about Brexit, it was there about the last general election. It's there about people who do and don't wear masks, who do and don't want to abide by such and such a restriction. There's so much naked, unalloyed hatred out there, and it's becoming right and acceptable to be seen to hate as long as you're hating the sort of people who deserve to be hated.
Yes.
And I find that we've descended into that, where it's no longer about debate and discussions. It's about people feeling free to hate on account of someone having an alternative, point of view. The use of like COVID-idiots, which is just a catch-all expression that's used again and again and again and applied to people just because they're asking questions. And of course, people want to ask questions about something that is affecting every aspect of our lives at the moment.
Yeah, I saw a great cartoon yesterday, which I retweeted. I can't remember who, from whence it came, but it was a couple of people walking towards a beach with a surfboard, wearing swimming trunks, with a child also wearing swimming trunks, and behind them, behind a sort of fence, were these two people in hazmat suits pointing at them, saying, "Look at those complete lunatics," and it kind of summed it all up for me.
Yes, everything's coming down to the coarsest, most tragically predictable terms. It's all about, if people don't agree with the orthodoxy, and if they don't loudly support the orthodoxy, whatever it is, then they're stupid, they're idiots, they're racists, they're misogynists, they're Islamophobes, they're transphobes. And this way in which hate is just becoming part of the daily stock and trade about how you keep people in line. People aren't in agreement. People are now just frightened to say what they think, or even to ask questions, because they're so afraid of simply being the focus of hatred or being dismissed as idiots or stupid people. And all you're doing to people, millions of people are just learning to break the law every day and keep their heads down. Millions of people are just learning to keep their opinions to themselves. In the context of that hate crime bill that's floating about, this idea that it would be that if you were having a conversation, if someone was having a conversation around the dinner table in their home, and it involved someone saying something that could be interpreted by someone as hate speech, that you would be prosecuted for that, for something that had happened in your own home. Now, implicit in that is that somehow or other, the authorities are going to get to hear about a private conversation. Now, how is that done? It can only be done either by an informant who's part of that conversation, then going to the authorities, or it's by some sort of application of technology. Yeah. So private conversations within the home are being listened to and reported to the authorities. Now, that's the application of fear. That's a government that, rather than address people's concerns, it just goes after making sure it's not possible to dissent, not possible to question the orthodoxy. And that's done by making people even afraid to speak in their own homes.
Yes. Well, this is what I thought yesterday when I heard Nicola Sturgeon, because it's less true, I think, in England at the moment. We may have our problems with Boris Johnson and people may be disappointed in how he's kind of administering the country. But when I heard Nicola Sturgeon yesterday describing how Christmas, could be a dangerous time, and that if we didn't do the right thing, people could lose their lives. And you're thinking, well, hang on a minute, on the one hand, you've said that people can do this stuff at Christmas as if you can grant freedoms to people. And at the same time, you're warning them that they're so idiotic and stupid that they might end up killing their relatives.
It goes without saying, I'm just another member of the public who's just reading things. But isn't it basically the case that the excess death figures are where they would be in any typical year?
Yeah.
600,000 or 700,000 people die in a year, and we're on track to have about the same number of people again. So that as I understand it, in my simple way, we aren't losing more people than we normally do at this time of year or in any other year. And so, what exactly is it that we've done so wrong? What is it that people are still being punished for?
Yeah.
In terms of these ongoing restrictions in the form of lockdown, and it's just this overweening perception that people have had to accept now that into an uncertain future, for as long as somebody else sees fit, our freedoms don't count. That we have to wait every day to be told what we're allowed to do and who we're allowed to do it with. And somewhere in amongst all that has been completely lost the fact that the population handled and spoken to differently could have had the personal agency to look after one another, to look after the elderly, to look after the people that are at risk, while still being able to carefully and responsibly go about their own lives, maintain their businesses, maintain their livelihoods, keep their jobs. But instead, we've suddenly, within a matter of months, it's not even been a year, but we've accepted this role as being so clueless about everything that we can't make a move out of our houses unless somebody else has told us it's all right.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, when they ruled last week that you basically could not travel from England to Scotland, I wondered whether I was just imagining that. And I wondered how they could even try to police that. But then worried, actually, that if they did start to police it and actually did put police on the border, it would appear that they have the power to do that.
Are we free people or not? Is my basic question that keeps me awake at night. And were we ever, until this happened, were we just living under an illusion of liberty and freedom? Were we in fact always, as far as it matters, captive creatures?
Yeah. Well, I like to think that because of
at a moment's notice, we are just dependent on being told what to do in every aspect of our lives, possibly forever.
Well, I like to think that the election process means that you do have some power to remove and or change the government that you're not liking. But unfortunately, in Scotland, that doesn't appear to be the case, because under the current rules and regulations of proportional representation, I don't think the SNP is ever going to be out of power, is it?
Well, it certainly absolutely bestrides the Scottish political landscape without a shadow of a doubt. And the fact is, contrary to the impression that is so carefully curated, we have not had a good COVID. Scotland is right up there amongst the worst COVIDs anywhere in Europe in terms of death tolls in the care homes, death tolls as they're being counted overall. We have had a bad COVID, and yet so many sections of the media down south are content to go along with this idea that somehow it's been handled much more professionally and much more capably up here. And there's just no room up here for saying that all of the same mistakes have been made here, if indeed mistakes have been made. The picture is exactly the same up here. Yeah. And when you compare a country of about 5.5 million people to other European countries of a similar population, we've got far higher death tolls here than in other similar sized countries. But there's no sort of mechanism anymore for criticising and questioning the government. Because if anyone seeks to do that, then they are targeted by hatred and bile that's just supposed to close you down. Because it would appear that out there's an attitude that instead of making anything better, we've got all the problems up here that we've discussed before, that health, infrastructure, education, civil engineering projects, everything has been handled badly up here. And for a long time, everything is on the slide, but it's not challenged. And now all that appears to be happening is the government up here, with a lot of the media complicit in it, the government are just seeking to create an atmosphere where to question and to ask for something better is almost a crime.
Yes.
That has to be shouted down. Dissent is wrong.
But it's like politics. But it's like politics as a cult, isn't it? I mean, it really is quite cult-like in the way that you have the great leader. Like North Korea had the dear leader, and then followed by the great leader, and followed by the the wonderful leader, and all of that. And that's kind of the sense that you get now, that you cannot criticise anything or anybody because that would be the devil itself's work.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I am one of many people who is just characterised as the wrong sort of Scottish person. I'm not just someone who's got an alternative point of view that would like to see another government, a different government, that is intolerable. And increasingly, voicing an opinion like that is being characterised as stirring up hatred.
Yeah.
Just not agreeing, just vocally not agreeing with what's happening and questioning the orthodoxy is becoming characterised as stirring up hatred.
Yeah.
Just because you don't agree with the dominant orthodoxy. That's the situation in which I find myself on a daily basis. And yet I know that there are millions of people around me who agree with me.
Yeah.
Because they make the point of quietly coming up to me and telling me that they agree with me. And I do get massive amounts of, private support for the stance that I've taken on various issues. But to do so in public is just to open the floodgates that lets the sewage in.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I'm hearing more and more of that from this part of the world as well, where people are, for example, very, very happy to agree with some of the things that I say on the radio privately, but can't actually come out and say it publicly, which is an extraordinary state of affairs, really. Neil, listen, we've run out of time, I'm afraid, but thank you very much indeed. As ever, we'll be talking to you plenty before whatever the Christmas bubble brings, I'm sure. Neil Oliver, archaeologist, TV presenter there, talking common sense as usual, as he always does, from his world headquarters up there in Scotland, which has become a very strange place over the course of the last few years, I'd have to say.